I will open.
All right, we're ready here, ready to roll.
Awesome. Welcome this evening. My name is Dolores Garcia. I'm a public affairs specialist here with the Bureau of Land Management at the Arizona State Office. I'll be assisting with some of your technical support this evening. And as part of that technical support, I wanted to make sure that you all are aware of some of the features that'll be available to you to ask questions in this question and answer session, as well as raise your hand. So at the bottom of your screen, you should see a few options available to you. There's a chat feature that includes some dialogue bubbles, a raise hand feature that will allow us to see your hand raised when you do have a question, if you'd like to ask it in person. We also have a Q&A box with a little question mark in it. Feel free to drop your questions in there. Those will be addressed at the end of the session. We will have presentations from BLM as well as the project proponent, and we'll also include a short demonstration of the e-planning website and how we prefer that written comments come into the BLM. There are many different ways to submit comments. That is our preferred option, but we'll introduce all those options to you as well. With that, I also want to let you all know that we do have a closed captioning option at the bottom of the screen. This is an automated closed captioning, and the audio or the captioning may have some points of being slightly inaccurate because of its automatic generation. But I just wanted to give you that heads up. With that, I'll turn this over to this evening's primary host, Derek Eisenbach.
Hey, great. Thank you, Dolores. Let me update my name here for everyone just in case. So I'm going to go through a little bit of introduction and kind of do a slow roll to the start of the meeting here. And that way, anybody who's coming in just a few minutes late here, any stragglers will be able to catch up when we actually get into the content here. So let me kind of run some things down and do some introductions, and then we'll get underway. Welcome to the Safford Field Office Calypte Solar Variance meeting. Calypte Solar is being proposed by Advanced Power. They're proposing a solar photovoltaic energy power plant in the San Simon Valley, just south of the city of Safford. This meeting is being held as part of the solar variance process, and I'll talk a little bit about that in just a few seconds, but I want to get some logistical things out of the way. First, I want to draw attention to the website, and I'm going to stop sharing for a second and let one of my colleagues here bring up the website, and I'll kind of talk through where you can find more information right now on the project.
Are you able to see it?
Not yet, Selena. Here it goes. Okay, it is up. So the link that Dolores just put over in the chat and what is on the main slide that I was just showing you will take you to this website. And this is our e-planning application that really stores all of our NEPA projects. But this is something we call kind of like other NEPA. And so it sort of is a repository for a lot of the solar variance projects that we're conducting statewide. That's why the project location over here says Lake Havasu City. We had to just pick an area, but there are multiple projects hosted on here. Everything that you're going to be looking for on Calypte Solar will be under documents. And so you're going to scroll on over to that documents and click on that. And documents will open up this menu here. And I provide updates right up front. And you can see that there's a lot of files back there, for, like I said, for other projects. But Calypte Solar will be right up at the top. And if you look, we've got 3 files in there right now. We'll be adding a couple more files in there. You'll see the preliminary plan of development. That's what's submitted to BLM by Advanced Power when they come in the door with an application. So we'll talk a little bit about that. It's kind of the conceptual plan of development at this point. It is not very detailed, but it does give an overview of the site. some of the ancillary facilities that would be needed on that site, a bit of information about the technology, and generally how construction might roll out. But a plan of development that's ultimately approved on the project would be far more detailed, and I'll offer some context as we move through. After that, you'll see the variance factors analysis report, or what we call a VFAR, VFAR, and that's going to be the desktop study of resource impacts that we ask to be prepared as a part of this variance process. So Advanced Power will be talking through that a little bit later tonight, and you can go there and review that for yourself. So that's a nice little report. And then underneath there is, it says Calypte Solar KMZ/Artesia allotment. This is a file that you can put into Geographic Information Systems, or GIS, if you use that, or into Google Earth. So the cooperating agencies that we work with, our partner agencies, and a lot of other evaluators like to put that into their systems and look at data layers and how that project may intersect with various data layers. But if you like to do that over in Google Earth, knock yourself out. So that's there for you as well. The variance factors analysis report contains quite a few maps as well that Advanced Power has prepared. So that is where you'll go to find documents. As far as commenting, we actually don't have comments open through the website. So you can stop sharing right now, Selena, and I'll reshare my screen. And bring us back to this, and you'll see the way to get comments in will be email is going to be what we would really like. So we have the BLM Safford Solar inbox for BLM Arizona Safford Field Office, BLM_AZ_SFO_solar@blm.gov. So that's our preferred way to get comments in. You can also put them in postal mail to the BLM Safford Field Office. Attention to Ron Peru at 711 South 14th Street in Safford, 85546. So that email, or that postal address, is there. And then, of course, my information should be in news releases. So feel free to email over to myself or to Dolores, or any BLM email that has been released out as part of announcements for this project. But that solar inbox or the postal mail will be the best way to get it in. We're asking for comments by September 16th, 2024. So 30 days out from now, we'll take comments or questions. And certainly if you have questions on the project, email those questions as soon as you can, because sometimes getting answers to those questions can help you have more informed comments. So we're open to that. Also, to do some introductions here before we get rolling. Let me introduce myself. I'm Derek Eisenbach. I am the Renewable Energy Program Lead and Senior Project Manager for BLM's Arizona State Office. I'm the one who kind of runs a lot of these variance projects with my colleague here, Selena Martinez. So let me bring Selena up.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Selena Martinez, and I work alongside Derek in the state office here in Phoenix, and I am the Renewable Energy Branch Chief. Thank you for joining us.
Great. And while we work out of the state office, it's really the local office that does so much of the heavy lifting. And so let me bring Charisse Flatt up.
Thanks, Derek. Good evening, everyone. My name is Charisse Flatt, and I am the Safford Field Manager. On behalf of the Safford Field Office, thanks for joining us tonight to learn a little bit more about this project proposal and the variance process. We do have a number of our specialists online to help respond to any questions you might have later this evening. So again, thanks for being here, and turn it back over to you, Derek.
Thanks, Charisse. And our coordinator there in Safford is Ron. So Ron, why don't you come up?
Oh yeah, I'm Ron Peru. I'm the project manager for the Safford Field Office. The one thing that I did is I corrected the address at 711 14th Avenue in Safford. I put that corrected address in the chat so everybody can see what the corrected address is. It's not street, but it's avenue. So thank you.
All right, my fault on that one. Apologies. Thanks for catching that, Ron. And I'll fix that on the website as well. And then Dolores, we've already met Dolores. She is our public affairs specialist. So for any media that is on, Dolores will be your contact on this. And either Dolores or our local Gila District public affairs specialist who will be able to kind of coordinate responses for media inquiries. And then Dolores is helping us out on technology tonight. So thank you, Dolores. Again, written comments by September 16th, 2024. So I want to get into the actual presentation right now, and I want to start it off with a little bit of a policy lecture. So hopefully I don't lose you, but this is really important to kind of set the stage for where we are in the process. BLM manages lands under the authority of the Federal Land Policy Management Act, or FLPMA, right? And that requires BLM to kind of comprehensively set land use plans, or what we call resource management plans, for lands in its jurisdiction. These are a lot like county comprehensive plans in a lot of ways, right? Except they're for BLM lands, but they provide decisions for what's allowable and what's not on BLM land. So this area that we're going to be looking at tonight is in the Safford Resource Management Plan. That resource management plan is pretty old, but it's been updated periodically with what we call amendments, or resource management plan amendments. And these are kind of programmatic or comprehensive amendments that may change land use decisions, or sort of adapt to changing conditions that kind of come through the years. For solar energy, 2 resource management plan amendments have changed the Safford Resource Management Plan to allow for solar energy. The first one is the Western Solar Plan back in 2012. This was a plan that affected 6 Western states, including Arizona, and it set, if you will, kind of zones for solar energy projects. The first one would be exclusion areas, and I've highlighted these in red. Those are subject to 32 different exclusion criteria, or protected areas, in which solar would not be considered, right? So that was lands off the table. And those are your National Conservation Land System lands, so national monuments, areas of critical environmental concern, things like that. There were also other things in there, like slope exclusions, things related to technology, recreation management areas. I could talk all night about these 32 different criteria, but these were deemed as like, hey, not compatible with solar energy, so they're off the table. Then we had the kind of greenlit areas. These were areas that were specifically designated for solar energy, and these were called solar energy zones, or SEZs. They're not really applicable anymore here in Arizona, because all 3 of the SEZs that were designated ended up being committed to solar projects already. So the idea was that incoming solar projects could be steered to these renewable energy zones first, these solar energy zones first. And we did that in Arizona, and projects are committed to those and either working through permitting right now, or actually under an active lease. So that takes care of those greenlit areas. Everything else is kind of that yellow light, what we call a variance area. It's sort of like a proceed with caution, just like your stoplights would be. And these are areas that may be suitable. They're likely suitable. However, before sort of green lighting those and moving those into NEPA, where, permitting would take place, the plan asks BLM to sort of stop for a second and go through and review some of the criteria that have some of those exclusion criteria, and see if any conditions have changed that might take a yellow area and bump it into the red, if you will. So that is what we're doing here tonight. We are looking at the variance. We are going to look at this area, and we are going to determine if this area is suitable, or if it is, subject to one of those exclusion criteria out there. So that's what we've been undertaking in this variance process, and we're doing a whole lot of work here behind the scenes. But a part of the variance process is to go out to the public and do some Q&A and see if there's anything that we can learn from the public about this site as well. The other plan, and this is less of a concern right now, but just something that comes up frequently because there's a lot of stakeholders that were involved in it, is the Restoration Design Energy Project out of 2013. So shortly after that Western Solar Plan designated these lands and called these lands variance lands, Restoration Design Energy Project set up some specific standards for BLM Arizona. We established kind of new priority areas, or priority criteria, called renewable energy development areas. And these are lands close to transmission that is either previously impaired or low potential for resource conflict. We also had a whole bunch of what we call design features, or basically like fundamental requirements that projects must adhere to. And we're in such an early stage of permitting right now, I don't want to kind of get into that. But if a project was to move forward in permitting, it would have to abide by all the requirements of the applicable land use plan. before I leave anything about planning here, I do have to kind of throw a curveball. We are in a planning experience right now for solar energy. These plans now are from 2012 and 2013, and BLM is undergoing a new Western Solar Plan to again look at exclusion areas and to establish kind of design standards that might be carried forward for projects not in exclusion areas. That plan is scheduled to be published at the end of the month. That will be the proposed plan, and then there's a few statutory and administrative requirements that plan needs to go through before a decision can be rendered. But just so you know, we're close to the end of that process there, and we have a pretty good idea based on drafts of that plan that were circulated out to the public earlier this year of what things will look like. And this project is in conformance right now with the Western Solar Plan in RDEP. In other words, it is not in an exclusion area, and it would not be an exclusion area under any of the alternatives presented in the new Western Solar Plan. So for the most part, we feel pretty clear on plan conformance, of course, with the caveat that we are still operating under 2012 rules, and that means we have to do the solar variance, which is what we're doing right now. There's a few things I want to kind of talk about with the solar variance and how it's going to kind of unfold here. I want to emphasize that there is no decision before BLM right now. This is not a scenario where BLM is permitting a project where there is a full force and effect decision rendering an application a denial or a permit. This is simply a process, what we call a pre-application process, to see if conditions have changed since those plans were implemented. Ultimately, what we learn through the variance process will culminate in a report that goes to leadership for concurrence as to whether the proposed concept fits with land use planning objectives more broadly. So that's what we're kind of doing here. If the director, and this will go all the way off to Washington for the director to review it, if the director concurs that our finding that a project is suitable for acceptance into NEPA, she'll provide that concurrence, and we would begin permitting in earnest. And I'll talk a little bit about that here. So here's where we are. Pre-application, that's where the applicant comes and says, hey, BLM, we're interested in a project out there. And we kind of, talk informally through some of the constraints that we know about or particular sensitivities on the landscape. They'll submit an application and we begin the formal pre-application process or the solar variance process. And I've highlighted that in the green box right now. That's what I just discussed. If everything goes according to I guess you could say Advanced Power's hopes here, right? They would receive a solar variance concurrence likely in fall of 2024. So, it'd be a few months away. We're accepting public comments till September. We'll have some discussions here in BLM, Arizona. There'll be some briefings. And if the director agrees with the information presented, the concurrence will come down in probably late fall of 2024. If that happens, what we would do is pivot back and accept the application and begin what we call kind of pre-NEPA planning or NEPA planning. That would require baseline research out there in quite a bit of detail. So we'd be looking at cultural resource surveys, wildlife surveys, visual resource surveys, hydrological, surveys, including, delineations, jurisdictional delineations and hydrology, you name it, right? We go through all of that and get that baseline research to inform NEPA. Meanwhile, Advanced Power would be working on a plan of development that would have far more detail about how they'd actually execute a solar project out there. And that would become the proposed action in NEPA. And then we'd go ahead and be working towards planning NEPA. That would, again, if everything lines up for this project, probably get going in spring of 2025, and it would go on until it's done. We can't start NEPA until we're satisfied we have all the information we need to get moving in NEPA and inform the public at that public process. And that takes us into NEPA, which would be the next stage. That's the hard look at how a project could be permitted. It takes anywhere from 18 to 24 months, and it's initiated with a public scoping meeting. And I highlighted public there because this is meaningful opportunities for the public to get involved and be informed and offer comments about how this analysis for permitting would get underway. So that is all TBD, right? We are months and months away from that being a possibility. But just so you know about public involvement, in addition to scoping, there would be a draft analysis followed by a public comment period on that draft analysis, roughly 6 to 9 months after scoping. And all this would culminate in a decision where BLM would decide the selection of an alternative to the project, whether or not to authorize that project, and what conditions it must be adhered to. And if that project involves any kind of a plan amendment decision, which I can't speculate on it, right? But it would be sort of subject to the resource management plan at the time. There may be a protest period involved in that. So there's plenty of public opportunity still to come, but I kind of caveat that we may go dark after a while, right? This is a very pre-application process, and there's a lot of steps to go through until we get down to that public scoping. So just want to make that really clear to anybody. So to kind of recap, there's no decision before BLM right now. The solar variance is just this pre-application review of certain criteria and an opportunity for some early engagement with stakeholders and the public to better understand potentially affected resources out there. Project applications may be withdrawn at any time or denied for regulatory reasons as well without public notice. So projects that move forward into NEPA will be widely noticed at their initiation to solicit public participation. We're talking media releases, all kinds of outreach, social media blitz, and all of that. A project that withdraws or ends up being denied because we find some sort of regulatory conflict here, like a major plan conformance issue, it'll just go away. So, if you don't hear about this project again, that may be the likely story. Advanced Power is chosen a different direction, or BLM found a fatal flaw in that project. But if this project does have legs, you'll hear about it again, but it may be a while. And the last, I kind of want to bring up this point because I know that out in sort of public discourse, there's a lot of misconceptions about BLM's role in permitting. So the fate of most project applications is within the regional utility market that purchases power and delivers it to consumers, right? This market is competitive. This market is geographically widespread. And at this stage, what we are doing is simply facilitating Q&A and getting some feedback to developers on the site that they may be considering marketable. BLM's focus is on each site and the resources in situ. In other words, like on that site. I know that some folks feel like BLM should be pushing a solar policy that may change things like solar on rooftops, or BLM should not be permitting solar that energy that may be used in Phoenix, right? These are kind of market decisions that are outside of the scope of what BLM can consider. Products developed from public lands, whether it's cows or copper or hydrocarbon resources, are used all over the globe, right? And so energy, electrons produced from solar energy is really treated no different by BLM. We stay out of the market and we look specifically at the site of the lands that we manage. And so that's kind of where our focus is. And so just want to kind of remind everybody of that, that we are somewhat limited, right, in terms of like things that we concern ourselves about here at the BLM. So we're really focused on the site. And with that, I want to turn this over to Advanced Power and Taylor, who will introduce herself and her team and take it away and present their concept. We'll have some Q&A at the end of this. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much, Derek. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. I will go into full view. I'll minimize the team chat. Okay, can everyone confirm they can see it okay? Great, perfect. So I want to start off by introducing myself. My name's Taylor Williams, and I am the project developer for Calypte Solar. I'm located in the Houston office. And first and foremost, I really want to say appreciation to everyone taking time out of their day to come and give us the opportunity to discuss this potential project with the BLM, and also want to take the opportunity to introduce Colin Brown.
Yeah, thanks, Taylor. My name is Colin Brown. I'm Vice President of Development at Advanced Power. My responsibilities include day-to-day oversight of our renewable projects in Arizona and throughout the U.S.
Great. Thank you so much, Colin. So we are Advanced Power. This is our Calypte Solar LLC project. It is located within Graham County, Arizona. This is a 285 megawatt solar PV plus 200 megawatt 4-hour battery storage system. And Colin, I will pass this off to you to introduce Advanced Power.
Yeah, thanks, Taylor. So before Taylor gets into some details on the project, we wanted to provide an overview of Advanced Power, which is the parent company that owns Calypte Solar. So Advanced Power is an independent power producer with an expertise in developing, managing, and owning diverse energy projects. Since the company's inception, we've developed over 1,000 megawatts of solar projects that are now in construction or operation. We've also developed over 6,000 megawatts of natural gas producing electric projects that are all in operation. And between all of those projects, that are now operational and provide power to the equivalent of roughly 2.7 million homes, and have avoided approximately 41 million metric tons of carbon emissions. As we sit here today, we have a robust development pipeline with a diverse technology set, including battery storage, solar, and natural gas. All of the projects that we have developed and are continuing to develop are low or no carbon generating projects. We believe a mix of energy resources is required for a sustainable and reliable energy future as we participate in the energy transition. A couple of things that I'd like to note as that we as a company focus on in terms of developing projects. One is developing strong relationships with the communities that we site our projects in. We take that role very seriously and appreciate that we are coming into communities and proposing and being a part of that community for many years. And so we take that role very seriously. Secondly, we develop projects with a careful compliance and eye towards local, federal, and state regulations, following all laws and environmental standards to ensure that our projects are developed, constructed, and operated to the highest standards. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions about the company, or I can hand it back to Taylor to go through more details on the proposed project.
Why don't we just go ahead and push on
Okay.
through the presentation and do questions at the end? Thanks.
Sure.
Sure. Perfect. All right. Thank you, Colin. So from a project overview, we wanted to highlight where is this project located in the exhibit that has been presented. Calypte Solar is outlined in blue. We are, as I mentioned, located in Graham County, Arizona. We're approximately 11 miles south of Safford, Arizona. The nearest road to us is Highway 191 that is running to the west of the property, north to the south. And our nearest neighboring county is Cochise County. It's approximately 20 miles south of the project site. And as demonstrated in the exhibit, the dotted line here is where Graham and Cochise County meet. Additionally, as I'll be talking through these presentations, we will be proposing 2 phases. This capacity is for phase 1 only, and we've demonstrated the 285 megawatt AC solar with a 200 megawatt 4-hour storage system. Our current proposed technology is a ground-mounted single-axis tracking system and an AC coupled battery storage system. For these interconnections, we have phase 1, which is Tucson Electric Power, or TEP, and an optional phase 2 with Arizona Electric Power Cooperative, APCO, or TEP. This project site is approximately 6,340 acres, and this is exclusive of what our proposed GenTie is, and I will go in that in more detail throughout the slides. And this isn't an Artesia allotment. It's 100% located on BLM land. And of course, as Derek mentioned, pending project approval, our estimated commercial date is in 2Q of 2028. In the exhibit I have demonstrated in the purple blue area is the Artesia allotment that we're proposing for this project. The red line that runs through the project is the 230 kV Arizona Electric Power Co-op line. And then we also have a pink line here to the south for Tucson Electric Power, which is a 345 kV line. The yellow-orange line is our proposed GenTie line to the Tucson Electric Power Line for 7.8 miles, and I will go into that in further detail. All right, for phase 1 site components, I've already went through the PV and storage, but wanted to help display what the estimated project footprint looks like. So for phase 1 here, that's in the exhibit in yellow, the estimated project footprint is 2,000 acres with an optional phase 2 demonstrated in blue. That would be a PV up to 300 megawatt AC and a storage of 200 megawatts and a 4-hour battery. That estimated project footprint would be approximately 3,500 acres. For the solar and battery facility components, these are some of the items that you would expect to see after construction would be the PV arrays using our single axis trackers, the energy collection systems, access roads, fencing and gates, which would be in coordination with the BLM and the NEPA process, project substation and switch yard, O&M or operations maintenance building, temporary construction laydown yards during construction phase, a lithium-ion battery storage system, inverters, and medium voltage transformers. So for site access, the project plans to construct its primary access point from Highway 191, which runs right near the property. We anticipate to come in this corner where the Artesia allotment aligns with 191. Which is on the western portion of the site. There are also several two-track roads that run through the site that would allow for project access in the project area. Those roads may need to be upgraded if we move forward in the process. 2 roads that I did want to highlight on this map is we have the Artesia road that runs through a portion of this project, and also we have the Tanky road that runs to the south, and I'll identify on this also on the next map. Phase 1 contemplates connection to the existing 345 kV TEP line. It's the Greenlee-Winchester GenTie line, which runs northeast southwest and is located approximately 7.8 miles to the southeast of the project area. This GenTie line is also proposed on 100% BLM land. Optional phase 2 contemplates us connecting into the existing APCO line of 230. And this is the Red-tailed Dos Condados GenTie line. As you can see on the map, we have our proposed 7.8 mile line. Again, it's important to note that this is just proposed, and we will work with the BLM and all parties to ensure the best line or route for this GenTie, but we have just outlined it here as our proposed location. Development and pre-construction. So kind of giving you an idea of what the project phases are here. We're outlining just for phase 1 and the activities associated with each phase. So we have the environmental due diligence. That's going to look at cultural and biological surveys, our phase 1 environmental site assessment, and other suggested baseline studies as we go through this process. From an engineering standpoint, we're looking at ALTA surveys, the geotechnical report, site design, and optimization strategy. For permitting, as Derek mentioned, we have federal, state, and local permitting, including the National Environmental Policy Act, the NEPA process. Construction, we have site prep. So select vegetation would be cleared for permanent facilities, and other native vegetation will remain to the extent possible. The project aims to limit disturbance of native vegetation during construction by what we consider a low impact development or mow and roll technique across the site to remove any vegetation, but it's basically going to be enabling the vegetation to stay in the existing plant root systems in place. So it's very important for us to not disturb the native vegetation. So if it's able to stay in around the area and underneath the panels, we aim not to disturb that area and keep those root systems in place. Approximately 200 to 350 workers per day in the construction process. We will have a dust abatement plan, and it will be developed as part of the stormwater pollution prevention plan, which complies with Arizona State and Region 9 EPA requirements. And then we have operation and maintenance. Most of the activities you'll see is ongoing facility maintenance, repair, periodic inspections, and monitoring. And we anticipate up to 5 to 8 full-time operational jobs associated with this process in phase operations. Okay. For land use, in this graph, I've identified the Artesia allotment in red and also have demonstrated what other allotments are neighboring to Artesia. Again, this project is located within one ephemeral grazing allotment, Artesia, and for reference, it's number AZ5160, and that is, again, excluding the Gentile line. There are 6 range improvements identified within the Artesia allotment. There are 3 fence lines, 2 reservoirs, a well with storage tank, and a trough. Again, as I mentioned, the neighboring allotments are Stockton Pass, Munson, Snega, the Creosote, and Tanky allotment. Again, this project does require a right-of-way grant from the BLM as part of the variance process, and the proposed Gentile will be evaluated and discussed further if we are approved to move into the pre-NEPA process. Scenic and visual resources. In the map that I have identified, you'll see 2 colors. We've got the Visual Resource Management Class 3 in red, and then you have the Visual Resource Management Class 4 in yellow. The project of phase 1 would be approximately 75% in Class 3, with 25% located in Class 4. Our optional phase 2 is approximately 80% located in Class 3, with 10% located in Class 4. The proposed Gentile line where it is now is 100% located in Class 4. This proposed project may require is a plan amendment to the Safford Resource Management Plan to change the Visual Resource Management class from VRM3 to VRM4. Noted that this project is not located within a Special Recreation Management Area, or SRMA. It's primarily used for what's considered dispersed recreation, included OHV driving, hunting, primitive camping, bird watching, etc. The project will close the area from recreation within the fence line if it is approved to moving forward to the construction process. Vegetation. So the project area is located within both the Chowan Desert and the Mandarin Archipelago ecoregions. You can see we have 5 primary vegetation communities that are mapped, with the main being demonstrated here in the green and yellow. That is the mixed salt desert scrub and the mixed desert and thorn scrub. As I mentioned before, our project aims to limit disturbance of these native vegetations during construction with our low impact mow and roll technique if needed. For effective resources and wildlife, we have identified the Calypte project here in blue. There are currently no special management areas with the National Wildlife Refuges, as well as the Arizona Game and Fish Department and wildlife management areas, or the designated important bird areas, or the United States Fish and Wildlife Services, which are designated a critical habitat within or near the project area. The nearest important bird area is the Penaleo Mountains, located approximately 2 miles west of the project area, and the nearest United States Fish and Wildlife Services is designated critical habitat for the Mexican spotted owl, is located approximately 4 miles west of the project. This project is also outside of any mapped Sonoran desert tortoise and pronghorn antelope habitat. Again, a more detailed site-specific assessment of these impacts to the federally listed species and BLM-sensitive species and habitats would be completed as part of the pre-NEPA and NEPA process if approved to move forward. For water resources, all of the floodplains were designated as FEMA Flood Zone A. The Zone A designation includes areas subject to the 1% annual chance flood event of 100 year. And this was determined by using a desktop analysis. Also, according to the National Wetlands Inventory spatial data, there are 24 wetlands that were identified within the project, which is approximately 76.4 acres or 1.2% of the project area. It's important to note that the FEMA flood zones here are identified in blue. As part of our current site layout and progressing through other layouts, we are avoiding those areas and incorporating the correct offsites for avoidance strategy. Currently, Calypte Solar plans to drill a well for water usage. There are already some water wells on the site. The project will estimate using approximately 150 acre-feet for dust abatement during the construction phase and up to 10 acre-feet during operations and maintenance for panel washing. The desktop results that we receive for aerial imaging suggest it's unlikely that the ephemeral washes within the sites are potential jurisdictional waters or U.S. Waters of the U.S., since there's no apparent direct hydrologic connection to the traditional navigable waters downstream. Okay, so that brings us to the goals of Calypte Solar. So for phase one, we're aiming to deliver up to 285 megawatts of reliable, clean, affordable, renewable energy to Arizona under what's anticipated as a long-term contract with Tucson Electric Power, an additional 200 megawatts of energy storage for added electric system reliability. Same in parallel for optional phase two would be deliver up to 300 megawatts of reliable, clean, affordable energy to Arizona with APCO or potentially TEP. We aim to improve grid reliability and security by providing energy, capacity, and ancillary services to the grid, and provide full-time quality job opportunities to the area. We aim to collaborate with the BLM and the Grazement Allotment permit holders to minimize impacts on the existing improvements through the design project phase, and also coordinate with the BLM during design and construction to ensure the project minimizes impact to the native plant communities and sensitive plant and animal species, as it's very important to us as a company. All right, so that's the end of my slideshow. I wanted to detail out this is both myself and Colin's email address, as well as our website if you want to check us out and learn more about advanced power. But I'm really thankful everyone gave me the opportunity to present Calypte Solar, and I will stop sharing and pass it on to Derek. Thank you all for your time.
Sure. You can go ahead and keep sharing, actually, Taylor, because some questions may want to refer back to a map or one of your slides. So it's helpful to have that up for us. Thanks. And with that, we will open up questions as Dolores kind of talked through. If you can look at the raised hand on your little dashboard there at the bottom of your window or somewhere on your window, depending on how you have it arranged, you can raise your hand and we'll call you out. You can also put your question in the chat and I'll read that question out, and we can bring you on as well to verbally state that question. We'd ask that if you have comments, though, to try to limit yourself to just a couple of minutes and make a comment. We want to make sure there's time for anybody who has questions or comments to speak. And of course, like the best way to ensure your comments are recorded and heard as part of this variance process, to put them in writing and send them on over to us by September 16th or September 16th. Yeah. So feel free to raise your hand. All right, we got one. I didn't see who came up first, but we'll go with Mark Brawley.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Taylor, good presentation. A couple of quick questions.
Sure.
Has TEP already agreed to purchase the power, or is that an ongoing negotiation? And if so, what's the term of that lease?
Yeah, so we've actually are in process of doing our interconnection application with Tucson Electric Power. We have been awarded a queue position, and we've also put a bid into the most recent RFP that TEP released, and we're waiting shortlisting selection on that item. So we're hoping to hear back on that within the next month of the shortlisting schedule.
Okay, but it's technically, it hasn't been agreed upon at this point. And
That's correct.
What's the anticipated term of that contract you'll be asking for?
So I believe we proposed 25 to 30 years for the solar invest. We also have proposed it as a hybrid facility, but also have given the optionality for it to be separated into individual components as one of the requirements of the RFP.
Okay. With reference to mow and roll, that's primarily during construction, right? Post-construction, yes. Isn't there, depending on the design, there's quite a bit of herbicide used over that 25-year term. Is that correct? That mow and roll is more of a upfront construction phase. Is that right?
That's correct. So we aim to keep as much vegetation around the panel array. We take a shading analysis as part of our design to ensure that we have that incorporated. But what we would do is it's basically allowing enough space between the vegetation and the panels. But then we would more or less have someone go in and trim the facilities as opposed to using a herbicide. So it's more of a on our end, vegetation management with someone go in and trimming as opposed to using those alternatives of a herbicide.
You're talking about for the 25, 30 years, you would attempt to use the trim process versus a herbicide?
Yes, that's correct.
Is that being done on very many other locations? Because most of them seem to be used herbicide as the more economical, easier way.
Yeah, so it's something that's developed over the past few years, especially in these areas where we have more of the native and plant species. I've seen other projects propose it as well in the area, but it's something that we're looking further into as we progress through the project. But it is our hope that that's how we can maintain versus the herbicide. But that's
right.
kind of our stance now.
Mark, if I could just step in for 1 second and add some context on that as well. BLM is certainly working with evolving design standards on site preparation technique, including minimal vegetation clearance, as what's needed essentially for access to the panels and whatnot. There's a few outcomes that BLM is concerned about. One is, soil conservation and erosion, and leaving root balls of vegetation intact is really important to that. It also leads to greater outcomes in reclamation of a project when the project is no longer needed and the area is reclaimed for BLM. And then with regards to herbicide use, there's of course BLM standards on just how much and what herbicides can be used in given time periods. And there's a whole set of policies related to BLM on that, and any project would have to kind of conform to that policy. So really the use of herbicide is really directed more towards invasive and noxious weeds that may come to that site. And there's a lot of emphasis focused on not introducing invasive and noxious weeds to the site in the first place, so they don't need to be chemically treated later. But it's definitely a big concern. I think what you'll hear out of industry and what you'll see with a lot of the more contemporary BLM projects that are working through permitting right now is the old model of like grading a site flat and turning it into a dirt parking lot and then putting panels on top of it is just not viable anymore. And it's actually very problematic for construction because it leads to all kinds of drainage issues, and it's a lot more work to sort of maintain. And maintaining natural contours and reducing the amount of vegetation removed really leads to just kind of a win-win for all.
Appreciate that. And I need to yield my time, but I have two quick comments.
Sure.
While the herbicide, et cetera, is a concern, I think one of the things I'd like to point out that is pretty common to most of these deals, I think that we've looked at in the past, and that is I would just share with the listeners that if I did my math correctly on the fly as you were moving there, it's pretty consistent. If you look at it, I think our county, one of the things that's precious to us is our water, and it's constantly becoming more and more of a battle. And if I follow, it's common to quote acre feet of water because most people don't understand and convert that. But if we're looking at construction, I think I caught 48 million gallons of water usage during construction, and somewhere around 3.2 million probably 3.2 million gallons per year for the washing and cleaning of the panels for the lifetime of the deal. That's a lot of water. And in exchange for that, our county is getting somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 employees. And so I would just ask the question, is 8 employees worth hundreds of millions of gallons of water before all of this is done? Is just something that I'll throw out on the table, and I'll yield my time, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
All right, I see another hand up from Jason Stearns. Feel free to come off mute, Jason.
Hey, Derek, we can also address some of the 4 questions we do have in chat if you'd like to as well.
Oh, I
And
did
then
not
we do
see
have
those
another.
over in the chat. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Over in the
Excuse me,
Q&A.
We've got one in the chat I've sent you, and then we've got a couple in Q&A.
Okay, well, let's go to that, and Jason, we'll come back to you. I think you're having some trouble coming off of mute here. So Sarah Wilkinson asks, where is the equipment for this project coming from or being made at?
Right. Patrick Del Duco, oh, go
Yeah,
ahead.
we can, I mean, so given the state of the project and where we are now, we haven't made any equipment selections. Once we get closer to the start of construction, which is expected in 2026 timeframe, assuming we get all approvals and permits, at that time we'll be making equipment selections, but we haven't made any selections to date.
And I would have a comment on that as well here from BLM and our perspective on it. While we, don't dictate to companies how to procure equipment for their site, it's worth noting that recently Congress has passed legislation that's now incorporated into our rent standards that would incentivize the development and essentially offer a discount on rent for American-built solar panels or American-built equipment. So there are very limited facilities right now in the United States that build solar power PV panels at the commercial scale. There are tariffs on some panels, so some from some countries can't make it in, and that's been in the news as well in recent years. But there are some facilities, notably a big one in Alabama, that are standing up right now. So that'll certainly be on the table should Advanced Power be interested in that. And if that legislation that has been passed and signed into law stands and our rules stand, that'll be an incentive out there for Build American and Buy American.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. And just to add a little bit on top of that, we're following the industry closely, and we expect that by the time we're starting construction for the domestic supply for a lot of the equipment to have grown exponentially from even where we're at today. So
cool, great. Let me check back in with Jason here. Jason, are you able to get your microphone squared away? If not, feel free to put your question in the chat or Q&A, and we'll definitely get to you, Jason. So I'll go to the next question from Ray Brady. Ray Brady asks, could you address any proposed limited lighting mitigation efforts to maintain night sky conditions and minimize potential impacts to the Mount Graham Observatory facility? And this was a question that also came in my email earlier from staff up there at Mount Graham. So important question.
Great. So I'll pass it over to Patrick Del Duco, who is our our engineering consultant or with Advanced Power. Patrick.
Hi, Patrick Del Duco, engineering manager over here at Advanced Power. The amount of lumens used to light a solar array would be very minimal, and it's a good concern. And I actually have been into astronomy a bit myself, so we would definitely coordinate any kind of lighting study to make sure that we didn't impact it. But being the proximity of Safford itself and the, a couple of small gate floodlights that would be even probably motion activated would be minimal impact. We would definitely work to make sure we direct any lighting away, though.
Yeah, and one of our design standards that we have in effect right now is, downward cast, shaded lights, motion activated. So there's definitely concerns about that, but BLM more broadly, I know, has been able to deal with lighting plans on solar facilities and designated night sky areas. So definitely something that would be an issue that would come out in NEPA and studied and hopefully addressed through the design of the project. All right, it looks like Jason might be ready to go here.
There, can you hear me now?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
Thanks.
sorry about that. New keyboard was fighting me.
That's all right.
Yeah, question. Are you guys already in contract with BLM for the acreage, or is it contingent on the NEPA studies and all the other state studies to evolve first?
Yeah, everything is contingent right now. So this is a pre-application process. we have not even accepted the application, if you will, which would, be the starting point for us to organize and plan for NEPA and then execute NEPA. So we're very much at a kind of due diligence and Q&A stage here, and not in any kind of position to go down NEPA permitting yet.
Okay, so follow up, there hasn't been a negotiated price per acre at this point?
No, there has been new rent rent rules put out just recently. The rent rules, are always subject to change as policy changes with legislation and whatnot. These are new rules that changed rules that were put out last year. They had changed rules on acreage rent before. The new rules will have a component of acreage rent and what we're calling a megawatt capacity fee, which you could sort of think of as a royalty on the resource, on the sunlight, if you will, the way sort of like royalties are paid on other energy like oil and gas. There's also lots of legislation that's been bandied about. I can't kind of officially comment on any of it because it's all just introduced stuff, and BLM doesn't take a position on pending legislation, but it is notable and worth going to research on things that would change rent or provide for various revenue sharing with counties or states. And so I know that our lawmakers have a lot of opinions on rent and what rent should be for these facilities. And I would expect that there will be probably, changes in the coming years, and how rent is collected or allocated it's a safe bet. How that may be, I have no idea. So what we have right now is what we have, and nothing's been negotiated with any project, though. They'd be subject to the rent at the time the project was approved, after approval. So there's no upfront contract or anything like that.
Well answered, thank you.
You got it. All right. I am going to go over to Sarah and then Nathan after Sarah. So I have a question from Sarah. She says, do you realize that the area you are proposing to construct on is used routinely for recreation use by people all over Gila Valley? Is there a reason you can't put this south of Tanky Road? So maybe kind of a question about siting and some acknowledgement of recreation that you may have considered.
Yes, of course. And we've been in contact with the BLM. We looked at several sites in the surrounding area. I believe some of our previous was in the Tanky allotment itself. One of our major choices around the Calypte site is that it is an ephemeral allotment, and it has while it is a grazing allotment, it doesn't have the availability to provide vegetation for a full year. And Derek, you can exactly quote me on the ephemeral definition, but out of the area, it was the best area that we could settle on, that was in close proximity of interconnection as well as with the BLM. But we will continue. We do have 2 proposed phases and are pursuing both phases. But as we move forward throughout the process, if we determine that phase 1 will not move, phase 2 would not move forward, we would also notify the BLM and release the rights to that area. So it's something that we're also considering. But Derek, didn't know if you had any additional context there to add.
Other than, your concern, Sarah, is certainly one I'm sure many folks share, recreation users out there. And that is one of the uses that we manage for multiple use, whether it's programmed recreation or dispersed recreation or maintaining routes out there for people to be out on UTVs and whatnot. So it's an issue that we would expect to scope early on in NEPA. I can kind of give you some insight on the directions that we take with this. For example, like OHV use. On projects elsewhere in the state that we're looking at, we will look at NEPA alternatives that preserve OHV use or mitigate, recreation impacts in some sort of way. So I think a lot of what you see here is what Advanced Power comes through the door with as a proposal. And we're too early to say how BLM might react to that proposal and propose those alternatives in NEPA and compare those and collect public comment on those alternatives. So by all means, it's an important siting consideration. And I think, as Taylor explained, they had some kind of other siting considerations that they sort of prioritized right now, but BLM hasn't gotten a hold of this project yet in a real formal way, and there could be other alternatives that get generated on that. So it's an issue that we will keep in mind and sort of hold on to moving forward into permitting.
Thank you, Sarah.
I want to go to Nathan next, who has his hand up. Go ahead, Nathan.
emailed you earlier and you kind of question. But I've University of Arizona and with the observability, and we were just worried. Our main concern was with and the dark, keeping that dark sky for us to observe. And we were, we just wanted to offer any help. We have some engineers and some lighting engineers if you needed a contact in our area. That's all.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much. I cut out just a little bit there, but if you don't mind putting your information in the chat, and we'll be happy to reach out. Would love some guidance in that area. Thank you.
I have some comments over in the Q&A, so I'll send one your way. This one should be an easy one, Taylor. Will Graham County Electric or Graham County benefit in any way from this project? So I think really talking about like, will any electricity perhaps flow to Graham County in this? And I don't know if that's part of TEP's service network, or if you might be able to quickly explain how the wholesale market works and how that might play out.
Yeah, of course. Unfortunately, we can't control where the power flows once it's on the grid, but typically grid operators serve local load first. This electricity, produced by Calypte Solar will be exported to Tucson Electric Power's regional transmission system and is intended to benefit Arizona residents and businesses. We're following TEP and what they're putting in their integrated resource plans, and they do have a focus on local load being provided to Arizona, but it's something that will continue to move through. But it's a little difficult for us to give specifics since TEP ultimately will control power.
Thanks, Taylor.
Of course.
Hope that answered that question. Andrew has a couple questions in here, and I'm going to go to his second one here first, and might have some time to get a quick answer on the other one, which is, it may be easy that you don't know, but let me just throw the first one out for somebody on Advanced Power to think about. Would the panels be silicon or thin film? So a question about technology there. But I want to kind of address Andrew's question while you guys think about that one. The second question is, talking to my neighbors who live between Artesia and Quail Trail, I've only spoken to one who isn't opposed to the solar farm. The concerns noted include unidentified safety concerns, property values, disruption to lifestyle, water consumption, long-term management and cleanup, or possible lack thereof. What would BLM consider noteworthy in terms of local pushback? Is there a threshold of signatures on a petition that would be meaningful? And I can take this question. It's a good question, Andrew, and I can't tell you what would be noteworthy in terms of local pushback. This is, we're not decision makers on this project, and there's not like really a decision to be had here. And we're so early in the process, it's really hard to say that we could put together a kind of narrative that would stop this in its tracks. The tough thing about projects, and this is, I think some folks have heard about the term of not in my backyard, right? Is that there's always going to be folks where there are undesirable land uses potentially in their backyard. I mean, I'm sensitive to it, right? Like, we have Safford staff, who are sensitive to it, of course, and what we're kind of bound by are policies that really rise above our heads, and the need to sort of consider multiple uses and to consider like broad policy. But there's a balance there, and I don't know how that balance plays out. And I can tell you that like at this juncture of the project, there's not really a deliberation of that balance either, right? We're in a very early stage of the project. We haven't been able to actually see how a project cited, how some of these concerns that you brought up might be mitigated, or to actually investigate those in a meaningful way in NEPA. Your concerns are valid, but they're also a bit speculative, right? Until we sort of really put that magnifying glass on there and look at water consumption with a hydrological and groundwater analysis, to look at, safety concerns and how that could be controlled by the project, or what the impacts are by property value by looking at comparable projects and property value changes there. So this is not to minimize those concerns, Andrew. And I definitely encourage you and your neighbors to, put together a petition if that's what you're looking for, or send letters in independently, or whatever it may be to kind of express that. We will summarize those and include those in the report and make sure the director understands the the local concerns that have already been expressed out here and the high chance of controversy that may be there. But in terms of being able to give you a threshold or to give you strategy, it's just something that I couldn't offer to you. I can address a couple of these things really briefly here. You know, projects in terms of cleanup, you know, there are reclamation standards. So no project is approved without a reclamation plan in place. And these projects have to be fully bonded for that reclamation. So Advanced Power or operator can't just like throw something out there and up and leave either halfway through construction, or if, you know, operations change sometime in the middle, like BLM will be holding a pretty substantial bond that would return that land to a state that would, you know, allow for pre-construction conditions to return. Other things though, like you said, lifestyle, you know, stuff like that. Yeah, it's a little bit tougher to manage, but we would hope that during scoping these could be brought out, and you know, the Advanced Power could listen and kind of conjure up ways that they might be able to mitigate that. So thanks for the question, Andrew. And looking forward to the comments that you and your neighbors are able to get to us for sure. I got another question here from Ray Brady. Under the BLM-AZ planning effort, were there any areas in the San Simon Valley identified as a RETA? The proposed project is close to existing transmission and would seem to meet the RETA criteria. Ray, I don't have that off the top of my head. That's a really good question. I am almost positive that there was not a RETA identified out there. If we had identified a RETA, we would have been, like I said, there's been a decent amount of project interest out there. We would have been pushing projects towards those areas. So the condition of the Artesia allotment, the sort of vegetation conditions of it right now and the ecological function of that allotment was the closest thing we had to a RETA, I believe. And when we've done some pre-screening, in other words, that there was you know, a certain kind of impairment on the landscape already versus like a different kind of productive landscape. So, but yeah, I'll have to kind of follow up on that question and get back to you, Ray, just to kind of confirm my suspicions. But I wish I had all those RETAs memorized, but they're kind of speckled throughout Arizona. Dolores, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight that we also did get another question from Ray Brady in the chat. And his question is, the Advanced Power Projects map shows 2 solar projects in Arizona. What's the other project in Arizona?
Sure. So we have another project currently in what we consider development phase, and it is with the Arizona State Land Department.
Great.
We
Where
have
about is
not
that project?
signed the
Just curious.
lease.
Yeah.
We haven't signed a lease or anything. We're in very early stages as well with Calypte, and it's located within Pinal County.
Great. Thanks.
Of course.
All right. And we still have that open question about panel technology. If anybody wants to take that on.
Yeah, so our projects are designed with silicon panels. We don't contemplate using thin film.
Great, thanks. All right, I've got no open questions in the Q&A, and I've seen some folks have dropping off. And we want to be respectful of time, but we also want to make sure folks have an opportunity. So with that being said, I'm not ready to close the meeting just yet. If you have any questions, feel free to throw your hand up or get in the Q&A with those right now. While that's happening, I want to bring up my slides.
Sure, I'll go ahead and stop sharing.
That's great.
There you go.
I'm going to go, sorry, I got to navigate around my messy little window here and come back to our slide and make sure I get this over to you. This is 14th Avenue. Ron, gotcha. And I'm gonna go backwards. Here is again how to get in touch with us. So at the website, you can get the information. If you send emails to the solar email inbox here, BLM_AZ_SFO_solar@blm.gov. That will be our primary place to be looking for any other questions or comments. That's checked on a regular basis and will certainly be checked by the end of the comment period. Postal mail to Ron Peru at the Safford Field Office. There's the address there. And by September 16th would be great. And again, Dolores can put her information into the chat. She's our public affairs representative. So if you're with the media, please reach out to Dolores and we can coordinate media responses, either from our state office or from the Gila District office. George, you got your hand up? Maybe not.
Shouldn't be up, sorry. I don't
Oh,
know.
there he goes.
That's okay. That's all right, George. All right, not seeing any other Q&A, not seeing any chat. I'm going to say last call right now. Charisse, you want to take us home on this one?
Sure, Derek, happy to. Thank you again so much, everyone, for joining. Really appreciate your input in the discussion here. Thank you also to Derek, Dolores, Advanced Power for the presentation. Hope you all have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you all. Appreciate your time. Have a great day or
you all.
evening. Thank you.